Even in the darkness where I sit and huddle in the midst of misery, I can remember freedom, but forget that every lock must answer to a key, that each dark clasp, sharp and intricate, must find a counterclasp to meet its guard, particular, exact and intimate. The clutch and catch that meshes with its ward. I cry out for the key I threw away, that turned and overturned with certain touch, and with the lovely lifting of a latch, opened my darkness to the light of day. Oh, come again, come quickly, set me free, cut to the quick to fit the master key. This sonnet is Malcolm Guite's personal reflection on the Advent antiphon, O Clavis David, O Key of David. Guite writes that having completed this sonnet, he felt he had finally managed to write with clarity about his personal experience of depression. He offers this sonnet to others who've been in that dark place. Depression is a complex illness. Scientists don't know the full biological story of what causes it. It can be triggered by one upsetting event or a combination of factors. It could be genetic. Some people have personality traits which make them more vulnerable to depression, such as low self-worth or a tendency to be very self-critical. Depression can affect anyone, whether they have a religious faith or not. As Christians, we speak of our faith giving us peace and joy, but it does not make us immune to depression. Suffering from depression is not a sign of spiritual failure or punishment for wrongdoing. It's not a sign that God has stopped loving us. Struggling with depression is nothing new. A number of significant figures in the Bible were prone to depression. One was Elijah in 1 Kings, where it describes how after a time of exhilarating success, he'd slumped again and felt he couldn't go on. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life." But the Bible shows that God hadn't finished with Elijah. After a time of rest, he was restored and continued the work God had for him to do. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians describes the difficulties faced by Christians in the very early days of the church 2,000 years ago. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. The key for us as Christians is the knowledge that we're not alone as we face depression. We know that God is with us in our struggles and hears our prayers, and that God's love for us is unchanging. Christian attitudes to mental illness have changed over the centuries. The attitude to illness 2,000 years ago and earlier was shaped and limited by the medical knowledge of the times. Conditions described in the Bible as needing evil spirits to be exorcised now have a different range of treatments. The vast majority of Christians now would not make a connection between depression and evil spirits as described in the Bible. But we believe that we're made in God's image. We know this. That means we're not just physical beings, but we have a spirit too. Health issues have a spiritual side as well as a physical one. And that's why we include prayer and trust in God among our ways to address depression. Here is the original antiphon. O Key of David and Sceptre of the House of Israel, you open and no one can shut. You shut and no one can open. Come and lead the prisoners from the prison house, those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death. When I read this antiphon, the image of the Key of David is for me an image of freedom. The quest for freedom is a theme throughout the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation. Just 3 chapters into the story of creation, humanity gives up its freedom by choosing to rebel against God. From that time forward, the perfect freedom God created in the Garden of Eden was gone, and the long-term effects were both physical and spiritual. The Old Testament records how God's people lost their physical freedom time and again as various empires overtook them. The loss of physical freedom was often tied to spiritual disobedience, like worshipping false gods. But time and again, the one true God forgave God's people and rescued them. When God freed the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, God was foreshadowing the arrival of Jesus Christ, who came to free humanity from sin, the spiritual slavery that leads us into darkness and depression. Today, many people are living in this slavery without realizing it. They chase the false gods of money, success, personal desire, only to realize they still have an emptiness that can't be filled by any of these things. When Jesus began his short period of ministry on earth, he announced he was the one that God's people had been waiting for. He did this by reading from Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. The core message of the gospel is that Jesus Christ rescues us from the slavery of sin and offers true freedom in this life and beyond. Whilst we still battle with sin, we are no longer slaves to it. Through the power of Christ, we are set free from the bondage of greed, vanity, pride, pornography, addiction, abusive behaviour, gluttony, selfishness, and the rest. Jesus said, "If you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." God doesn't leave us wondering how to grab hold of the freedom on offer. Freedom starts when we acknowledge our brokenness, as Malcolm Geet does with his recognition of his depression. And it ends with choosing Jesus and following him in our daily lives. Only Jesus holds the key that opens the door to true freedom, now and forever. Amen.